It is special to be here, and always special to us to talk about prayer, because we were founded to be people of prayer and to support and to help the church in its fostering of prayer. As you begin this week, and all of us across the nation begin this time of prayer, the first thing I would say about prayer is stop putting all this personal kind of attention into it, because the Spirit is praying in us. St. Paul tells us, I saw the Spirit praying mightily within me. The book of Hebrews over and over says Jesus intercedes for us eternally to the Father. And the intercession of Jesus is not somebody begging and talking about problems. It is Jesus looking into the Father's face in the tenderest love. And encaptured in this love with the Father, he is gathered in the Holy Spirit in tenderness. And that entirely dissolves the poison of jealousy, the poison of resentment, the poison of division, the hurt of hatred. That dissolves in the face of the Father. The only curing of the nations, the only curing of my life, the only curing of our lives and our relationships is love. Love is the answer. But not puppy love, not floppy love, not some kind of fuzzy idea that doesn't stand up to life's difficulties, but a love that is gentle yet mightily strong. The gentleness of a mother minding her children, staying up with a baby all night. A father taking care of the family and loving his wife tenderly and well. A relationship of love that goes through its pain and difficulty, its sensitivities and pain, and its tenderness and love. Staying faithful, staying constant. This is the love that God awakens within us. In other words, it's the capacity to stay human and loving and not running away to quick answers, not running away in the distractions that very often we get caught in. So the greatest call is to see the beauty of a rainbow and be enraptured in its beauty. To see a young child in its father's arms or a mother with her child is prayer. And I often call to married people, hold your married ring in your finger before the covenant of the Mass, and with great prayer ask God for the blessing of tenderness in the home. Watching and seeing our parents being good to each other are the best at 64 years old. My best memories are moments of tenderness and goodness I observed in my parents. And anybody at any stage who shows the capacity to overcome difficulties and problems and stay steady. I brought an icon with me tonight. A young man comes into Mass in the Priory, and he was his job moved to Milton Keynes from Oxford. And he said to me, I want to give the community something. And he went home to Italy and brought this back. And when I've sat in front of this icon, it simply brings me into stillness, in agitation, in distress, when things have gone wrong, when things seem to be eternally going wrong, when the broader social problems, our family problems, our personal difficulties are hurting. When you sit before the Blessed Sacrament or before the Mother of God, and she's holding the infant child in her arms. And the infant child has awoken in distress and real distress, because in the tradition of the Vladimir icon in Russia, the child has awoken because of a premonition of the Passion, of awful things that will happen to him. And in that premonition of fear and fright, the child touches his mother's skin. His face is touching his mother's face. It's called Our Lady of Tenderness, something Pope Francis alludes to all the time. And in the icon, the child is turning to its mother to support him in his distress. God, in the arms of a woman in distress. And in that child who is God, in his distress, is every distress in this room. Everybody, including me and including all of us here, the distress that can touch us deeply in the privacy of our inner selves when things don't feel to be holding at the center. When hurt is really hurting. And hurt makes us inhumane, unable to forgive, makes us nasty, poisons us. The impurity of poisons, the bigger impurities are the impurity of jealousy, unforgiveness, the nastiness that can characterize us, that can take possession of us, and can happen in a community. The greatest impurity of a community is when it's poisoned by jealousy, resentment, and we are called to be purified. And the only way for this to happen is the mind of Jesus. St. Paul teaches us, when I put on the mind of Jesus, Lord, I come to you in entire weakness, in entire surrender. As the child surrenders in his mother's arms, so do I, with every difficulty, every problem, because in my surrender, you bestow your mind on me, you restore me, you bless me, you gather me in tenderness, forgiveness and love. You make me capable of tenderness. You make me capable of love. You bring up my humanity, you bring up my true identity. The final little thought. Stop trying to pray. Stop the busybody preoccupations with prayer. I have learned to go to the chapel door and say, Lord, this time is yours. I have no idea if I'll fall asleep, if I'll be distracted, if I'll be more preoccupied with other things. I have no idea. But I'm giving this time to you. And I know that you and your Holy Spirit are praying mightily within me. So when the church and when the tradition wisely tells us to stay silent in prayer, it is because if you stay silent, you will become aware eventually, after the distractions calm down, you will become aware of Christ in his beauty praying within you. And that's the message of St. Teresa of Avila. She says your soul is like a beautiful crystal of immense beauty. For John of the Cross, it is a place of loving and tenderness. Where have you hidden, beloved, and left me mourning? These are kernel wisdoms telling us, only stay still. Allow the stillness to descend upon you. It will evaporate your worst difficulties. It will evaporate and heal our deepest wounds. And in those thoughts, since my brother came along with me this evening, my brother Father Yamai was only ordained last year, I want him to say a final little word of wisdom to us before we go on with our Mass.
You'll have to excuse me, my voice is not as loud as Liam's. Well, he's my superior, so when he asks me to do something, I just do it. And so, building on the words he has shared with us, just a few more things to say. If we listened to the first reading, it spoke about times for different sorts of things, different experiences. A time to love, a time to hate, a time for war, a time for peace. Different seasons in our experience of this reality we call life. And it is the same with prayer. There are different seasons we experience as we journey into prayer. In your prayers, do not be surprised if you experience times where you hate. It is a concrete experience. But what prayer is ultimately is being present to God, who is eternally present to us. And so if your experience leads you there, hate, joy, love, what matters is to be present to God in that hatred. And just peek after the example of Christ. In moments of difficulties, he was not afraid to say, my God, why have you forsaken me? In spite of all of this, it is only in being present amidst the changing seasons of our lives and in our efforts to pray that eventually we can arrive at the point where the words of Teresa of Avila can become true for us. And she says, let nothing trouble you. Let nothing frighten you. All things pass away. God alone remains. Whoever has God has all, because God alone is sufficient.